They're not your Orthodox Jew. Well, this was an Orthodox Jew. He gives his testimony in your life. It's just amazing. He just does a great job. Yeah, he can. What's up, Sean? How you doing?
1 week left. Yes, ma'am.
I ask you a question.
Okay.
I don't know
That they said,
why I brought them all, but I just felt compelled.
if you asked a Jew, they wouldn't be able to tell
I've
you.
had these books for about
What's that?
6, 7
What
years.
tribe?
I've never read them.
What's
That
this?
one,
Are you from?
I'm not from a tribe. I'm a daughter of Abraham.
Okay, let's see.
So that's what he just brought up here. You just mentioned that book that you're reading,
and this one.
Unholy War. That's a good
Now
one.
this one, I guess I started reading because there's a book.
We are live, by the way.
Oh, we are.
We are.
And that one.
My converted Hebrew name is Devorah Zahava, but Avraham Basara. I'm Devorah Zahava is my name, daughter of Abraham and Sarah.
Okay.
So I'm not,
Well, you know,
I'm not one of the tribes.
What I was studying in my studies, in Revelation, it said, a Jew today cannot tell you what tribe they're
Nope.
from.
They cannot.
Now there is
But they
the,
said, God knows.
God knows.
And he's
And
numbered
even
them.
Judaism teaches that when Messiah comes for them,
might be Levites.
that he is going to actually divide them and tell them where they belong. Bella, go back.
That's in the Bible?
Are we being
What?
broadcast over the internet right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people wanted to tune in, what would they tune in to? How would they-
I'll send you the link. Why are you touching stuff?
She loves you.
Okay, so last week we got into covering the one new man. We talked about what it was when you became a believer in Messiah, that you became a new creation. You no longer were yourself, that the old things were gone away. You're new in Messiah, and it's the same for a Gentile and a Jew. At that point that Messiah comes into your life, there's no more separation. There's no more separation between male and female. There's no more separation between Gentile and Jew. That in Messiah, he sees us all the same way. And I will go ahead and say it again, that doesn't mean that we replace Israel. That means that we are grafted into the commonwealth of Israel, that we are a part of them. We share in their blessings, and we share, but God still has a work for Israel to do. And you mentioned Revelation, and you know exactly what their work is to do in the times coming up there. Israel is going to fulfill their mission, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
God is going to use them. There's a lot of churches that teach that they have replaced Israel. I think it's dangerous ground.
Yes.
I think a lot of it has caused a lot of anti-Semitic feelings within the church. I think this is a lot of reasons we had a lot of horrible things happen in the Middle Age to Jews was because of false teachings of replacement theology. So tonight, we do not believe in replacement theology. We believe that Israel, Gentiles, non-Jews, we come together in the tree of the nation of Israel. They have their purpose. We have their purpose. What right now in the time that we're living in now, what is the biggest job the Gentile has towards the Jew?
Make them jealous.
Yeah, very good. That is our job right now, is to make them jealous to where they see what's in us and they want what's in us. And I'll share this in confidence that your parents won't watch, right?
They're not for life.
Okay. So last night we had Bella had a graduation at Biden Grace out there by y'all's house, Lutheran Church. And everything, when you go to Lutheran Church, it's liturgical. It's all reading.
Liturgical.
Yeah, that. And they do a lot of responsive reading and stuff like that. Well, if you've ever been in there, they got a big picture of Jesus over here on the cross on this side. And
It's all stained glass.
It's all stained glass. They got
It's
the
real
risen.
pretty.
Beautiful.
It is
That
beautiful.
church is beautiful.
They got the risen Jesus up front. Well, my in-laws who are practicing Judaism, they're not Jews, but they're practicing Judaism, went in, and my father-in-law had a hard deal with that because he didn't want to go because he don't feel like he should go into a place with idolatry and stuff like that. But my mother-in-law made him go, and she says, "You will go to the graduation." She goes, you will go. And afterwards, my interpretation, I felt he felt a conviction because the prayers and scriptures that was read, they once believed in Messiah. And I believe while they was there, they felt a conviction or something, because when he got home, he started wanting to do a lot of extreme things within Judaism, like make the house totally kosher, which would have made us to where we couldn't do certain, Right now on Sabbath, they give us the space in the back of the house. It's ours. We can do whatever, watch TV, whatever we want to do back there. But in the main part of the house, no lights can be turned on and off and stuff like that. But he was wanting to last night when he got back, wanted to.
He wasn't wanting to. He was wishing.
Yeah, he was
that the house could be totally observant.
Totally observant, and I'm just praying on that point that he was convicted, and I'm praying that that a seed got in somehow, and that God is going to start working in that. Maybe not, but it is a hope. I'm glad they went, because it ain't like coming here. You could come to this church and feel comfortable being a Jew, because you do have the cross, but you don't have all the imagery of the big stained glass pictures, and we don't do our prayers are more informal, so we don't do a lot of talk about Trinity, which we believe in all that, but it's really in your face there as far as the prayers and stuff. So that's a little testimony. I'm praying. Please pray with me that God will continue searching their hearts, because I believe that they once believed, and I believe that God still has a root there. And I believe he can pull them back real easy. So that's our prayer. So tonight, we're going to go to the second main part of this thing of getting back to the Messianic church. And the first one was the one you man, which we covered last week. And this one is going to be called covenant, because a lot of people don't understand what covenant is in Scripture. And because they don't understand covenant, they really don't understand what's required of themselves and what they can expect God to do for them. Because most of the time in the church today, we teach that you come to Jesus, and this is the truth. But we come to Jesus, you read your Bible, you come to church, you pray, and that's about it. And we don't teach the covenant like we should of what Jesus actually did for us on the cross, the price he paid for us, what we can expect from him and what he expects of us. Because faith, yes, we're not talking about salvation, so put salvation to the side. Salvation is of no works. The blood of Jesus does it. You're saved. So let's push that to the side. But once you take that salvation, there are things required of us as it is with him. And we're going to go through some of the covenants tonight, and we're going to see how God works through covenant and how he does his part. And if he does his part and you do your part, blessings follow, good things happen, and he will protect you. But if you leave or avert from that covenant or move from one way or to another, you don't get the blessings that you should get. So the first page we have 7 covenants that are pretty well known. And the first one is Adam, and that covenant was after they fell and they ate of the fruit they were not supposed to. God had to made a covenant with them. And let me pull this up in Genesis 3:16 and 9. This, you have good covenants, and then you have ones that because you made mistakes that you have to pay for. And this is Genesis 3:16 through 9. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing, and in pain, and you shall bring forth children. Yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. And to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of. Cursed is the ground because of it. You shall toil, and you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, and for out of it you were taken. You are the dust, and dust you shall return. The man named his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And the Lord made garments of skins and the man and for his wife and clothed them. Then the Lord said, see, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. And now he might reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So we see he cast out. But because of their behavior, you have a covenant coming on, because before then, we really don't understand how women had childbirth, how that happened before then. But we know from this point on, God says, okay, because of the fall of what you did, from now on, you're going to experience pain and childbirthing. You're going to have pain and some suffering and stuff like that. And for the man never had to really work before. He just walked around, and whatever he did, worked in the field. But now, because of the fall, he had to actually work the ground, plow the soil, pick the vegetables, clean the weeds out, which there was no weeds before this. There was no thistles or nothing in the garden. It was perfect. But when they did this, God kicked them out of the garden. There was thistles and stuff that he was going to start working with that he never had before. So their load of which were priests and kings. And if you think of Adam, you can think of Adam as a pre-type of Jesus in the fact that he walked with God. He was made of God. He had no mother or father. And his father was God in the same way. But he fell, which thank God that's when we got our chance and stuff like that. So from that point, we see where the pains of sin and stuff like that entered the picture. So that's a covenant that's not really great, but it's a covenant that had to happen because of disobedience in the garden. So before then, they didn't have to work in the field. Their childbirth, we don't really understand, but we know there was no pain at all, or we don't think there was. But from that point on, we see that bad things happen. So that's what we call the Adamic covenant. The next one is the Noah covenant, and we all understand this one. We know that, God, we know because of the sins of the earth, God was going to flood the earth, and he called Noah to build an ark. And we know the whole story. It rained and flooded, and all of a sudden, they were all saved. And what was the covenant he made with Noah?
I would not flood the earth again.
He would not flood the earth again. Sign of the rainbow. So we see that covenant was made because, God saw what happened, and he was grieved. God was grieved for what had happened, sin. He said, I'm not going to do this no more. Of course, we see later on, fire is going to burst the next time. But we know that the flood, the water, God said, I'm going to make a covenant with you that, you ain't got to worry about this no more. I'm never going to flood the earth again. And we also know, that Noah made a sacrifice, it was sacrificing and stuff like that, which is acceptable. And Noah was able to eat many things from the ground. The third one is the Abrahamic covenant. I'm not going to cover that one because we're going to get into that one really heavy in a few minutes. And the fourth one was the Israelite nation, or the land that belonged to the Israelites. And we're going to get into that a lot more, which along with the Mosaic covenant. The Davidic covenant, let's look at that one real fast.
What was number 4 again after Abraham?
Oh,
Don't you have your sheet?
I'm sorry.
Oh, honey, you're slacking.
I'm sorry.
We have some notes. You might want to take in-depth the notes, but.
Okay, so we're going to go.
Send them out too. Was Adam and Eve supposed to live forever?
Yeah.
They would have.
Yeah.
They would have lived forever, right? They would
Yeah,
have
they
never
were
died
immortal.
until after
And
the
they
sin.
were like God.
Yeah.
One tradition in Judaism said that before they were thrown out of the garden and Adam had to work the soil, all he had to do was speak to the plants and the trees, and
He
they
was
would
in
produce.
charge,
Yeah, I mean, he would say, produce, and basically, and they would produce, and he walked with God.
Anita Apple is.
He wasn't the one that had to be put in the cleft and covered up, because he was, we can't even imagine what we would have been like had it not been for the fall.
Yeah. Okay. 2 Samuel, we're going to start at verse 8, chapter 7. Now therefore, thus you shall say to my servant David, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pastures, from following the sheep, to be prince over my people Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut off all your enemies before you. And I will make you a great name, like the name of the great ones of the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, so that they may live in their own place and be disturbed no more. And evildoers shall afflict them no more as formerly. From that time that I appoint judges over my people Israel, and I will give you rest from all your enemies. Moreover, the Lord declares that you, the Lord, will make you a house. When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your ancestors, I will rise up an offspring who shall come forth from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. And he will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. When he commits iniquity, I will punish him with a rod, such as mortals use, with blows inflicted by human beings. So we see right here, this is actually talking about the Mashiach, that the Messiah was going to come from David's loins. This was his covenant that he made with him. He said, but because you have done this for me, and your heart is towards me, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to make your name great among the people of the earth. And that when you die, and when you go back to the earth again, one day I'm going call for someone from your lineage, which Jesus came along, and I'm going to establish his kingdom is going to be forever. And we got to understand that. In the church, we hear what kingdom of heaven and kingdom of God, which is, it's the same thing. But Jesus says that he came to proclaim the kingdom of God. The kingdom is now. No, it's not coming down from Jerusalem yet, but we're supposed to be walking in and not getting into prophecy, not getting into this naming and claiming stuff, saying though, you have kingdom authority upon this earth. He's given it to us now. We're supposed to be adding to the kingdom daily like they did in Acts 2.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to be out there bringing people in, bringing the captives into the kingdom. We should be having a kingdom mentality now. And I know it's a churchy world. I don't know that expression, what they say, but I know it's a churchy word, but it's a true word also. My kingdom, I live in the United States and I love this country. I do. But my citizenship is not in the United States. My citizenship is the kingdom to come, which I'm living now through the Spirit, through Mashiach. So that's one thing we got to remember. The Davidic covenant has already started. I mean, that covenant with Messiah, Jesus, is our ruler and reign. He is my king. He is my president. You know, I mean, you talk about Obama and Bush and stuff like that. Yeah, we vote for civil office, but my obligation don't come to them except in this country. My ultimate loyalty goes to Jesus Christ, and that's who we need to be voting for. And then, of course, 7 is the new covenant, which is Jeremiah 31 and 31 through 34, and we'll get into that probably next week because we got a pretty good bit to cover. Okay, to understand the old and new covenants, we need to first understand what the word covenant means. In simple terms, it is a formal agreement, and it may be agreement between two people, a treaty between nations, or a relationship between God and a human individual or nations. A covenant is more personal than a contract. It involves loyalty and allegiance, not just a financial exchange. And we talked about this last week. When Mark goes and buys a car, and he goes to the car dealership and they make the deal, and he puts a down payment on it, they agree to the price. He signs a contract. Once he signs a contract, that car becomes his, but not really his. It's actually the dealership's till you pay it off. But you can actually bankrupt and get out of that. There's ways that you can get out of that, and you don't have to be loyal to that contract. You can pay slow, which is going to hurt you in the long run. But it's not like the covenants that God has established with man. That's why I don't like to use contracts when trying to describe covenants, because contracts are not a loyal, great thing. They're a negative thing. I mean, whenever we get into debt, which sometimes we have to me, that's a negative. If I have to go buy a brand new car for $30,000 and my payment's $700 a month, to me, that's not a great thing. I'm not loyal to that. Plus insurance, plus all this other stuff. And then when you go get a house, now right now the houses are okay, but back when we got married, houses were ranging from $700 a month to $1,500 a month for just a normal size house. Right. That's not something to be loyal to me. You want to live there, but it's not like the covenants that God has made with us. So that's why I don't like to use contracts for describing this. It says, God has made several agreements or covenants with humans. He gave commandments and makes promises. So the first one we're going to look at is going to be the Abrahamic covenant. So, little background on Abraham. Abraham was this guy, he lived, working with his father, making these idols that we know some tradition that they were making idols and selling them to people and stuff like that. And all of a sudden he heard the voice of God. Mm-hmm. And God said, dude, you got to leave. I'm God, and I'm calling you forth. I want to be your God, and I want you to be about, people, and I need you to leave out of here. And we know after a long situation of everything, finally he was obedient enough to do that, but went through a lot of curves and turns and corners and stuff to get to where he should have been. And that's the same way it is with us too. When God calls us out of the world or calls us out of situations, I wish we went straight to the promised land. I wish Israel would have just left, passed over and went straight, which they did then, but they could have lived that way. They had to go 40 years in the wilderness before they could go into the promised land, because it took 40 years to get the world out of their system. And the same thing with Abraham. God called Abraham, but it took some time to get Abraham's old thoughts out before God could use them. So the first thing we want to look at the Abraham covenant was this is one of the more important covenants in the Bible. Why is this one of the more important covenants in the Bible?
It was foundational.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Sold out.
Well, the Abraham covenant, yes.
Well, I was gonna say too, from a worldly perspective, established Israel as a nation. But from the spiritual perspective, it established the lineage for Christ and all
Amen.
who
Yeah.
put faith in them.
Well, like
I'm
you
just
said,
throwing that out there.
that's good. Well, the word
good.
foundation's right, because without the Abrahamic covenant, nothing else matters. If he had not have stepped out and done what God said, you would not have had the children of Israel. Abraham was not a Jew. He was not he was a Hebrew, but he was not a Jew as per se as we think of the Jewish like Moses. They came from him, but he was not a Jew per se. He was not a Hebrew until he came through. So this is what it involved Abraham and the nation that would proceed from him, which is what Sean said. That this covenant also established the nation of Israel and the land, which is going to be very important as we talk about when we get into talking about the land. So who wants to turn to Genesis 12 for me?
Starting in what verse?
1 through 14.
The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Morah at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace.
Okay.
Keep going.
That's good. That's good. We see right here that, so you see the story. Now, Miss Pat, would you read Genesis 15, 1 through 4 for me?
And after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward." And Abram said, "Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing that I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus?" And Abram said, "Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, "This shall not be thine heir, but he shall come forth out of thine own bowels, shall be thine heir."
So we see here, we're going to see from the story from what Sean read, God calls him out. First mistake he made was he took Lot. Because what did God tell him? He didn't say take nobody with him. He said, "You and your family get out." Okay.
But it reminds me also several months back, I was gone home to visit my family. It might have been back during Christmas or Thanksgiving. Pastor Chris, my pastor at my home church, Ocean Memorial, had preached on those verses in Genesis 12. And he was coming from the viewpoint, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was about walking in fear or walking in faith. And basically, because of Abram's actions at that time, saying, telling the Egyptians, telling them that you're my sister,
Right.
The promises and how do I say this? I'm trying to remember how exactly, but basically, the covenant promise at that point had been put into jeopardy through Abram's actions, and God had later to redeem it.
He had to.
Because didn't he, at that point, didn't he strike Pharaoh with boils or swords or something on him?
I don't remember that part. All I do,
When he took Sarah.
I think he did something to him. 'Cause that's when Pharaoh got mad.
And
That's a lie.
Get out.
Yeah, and he got mad at the lie. But we see the situation that he leaves, so he takes Lot with him. So he believes the word of the Lord. He goes, so we know he has problems. So then we see that he gets angry. He hears this promise from God that he ain't got no children. He ain't produced no children. And he figures the point he's not going to have no children, so he comes and talks to God. So we see God affirms with him again that I'm going to do this for you. God just didn't send him out with the word. He kept on affirming the word to him. And the same thing goes with us. When God calls us to do something, whether it's to go to the streets or whatever our calling would be, he's going to keep on affirming his word to you. He's not,
I just think that Abraham was seeing things through the natural.
yes, yes,
He was seeing that she was beautiful and men would desire her.
right.
He didn't see that God initiated their marriage and he was going to bless and protect them.
Right.
He had not come into that vital relationship with God yet.
Nope.
And so through these circumstances, troubles causes people to seek the Lord.
Absolutely.
We do the same
Absolutely.
thing sometimes.
We do the same thing all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We do the same
all
thing
yeah,
all the time.
Yeah.
Not sometimes, because we, like she said, we see things through the natural, where God is trying to speak to you through the spirit
Yeah.
sometimes. I mean, when I was such a zealot, back in 85, 86, when I first got saved, I was such a zealot. I mean, I wanted to go walk around the Ozzy Osbourne concerts and just pass out, I wanted to do, I did. I wanted to go in there. I mean, I wanted to go in there and rebuke I wanted to go up on stage and just rebuke the devil. This was where I was at in the natural thinking spiritual. Well, now I'm much older and I realize that would have been really dumb, It wouldn't have done anything for God. So we continually to fight between that natural and the spiritual. And Abraham had the same fight, like you said. He's been told, but my point is God is reaffirming continually to him, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this for you. He's going to do the same thing for us. There's times when we get down, when things get bad and stuff like that. God, if you listen, he will reaffirm and say, Sean, you can do it.
But I'll say this too, from the other parallel I drew from Pastor Chris's sermon back then too, is that when we don't listen to God's affirming voice over and over and over again, and we step outside of his will, he will always have to redeem that purpose for us. I mean, because we didn't listen to God, we didn't trust him, we stepped out.
Well, we're going to find out. Well, we're going to back that out through the study, because we're going to find in situations where Israel backed down on their promises, and then Abraham, as you just said, backs up on his promises. And it's not so much that God is going to get you.
No, it's just like,
It's just God gives you a choice. God says, it's just like me and Mandy. We're married. Well, if I go out in the morning to find a woman and have an affair with her,
You'll be dead.
well, I'd be dead. But what I'm saying, but the situation is what happens in that covenant relationship with her, right? I mean,
Right.
She can't trust me. I can't trust her. So the same thing's with God.
Wait. I didn't do anything in that
But
situation.
God, well, I'm saying God is working on your trust too. I've heard sometimes people say, I've never heard, God speak to me, and whether I believe stuff like that. And he does speak continuously. But sometimes he can't speak if he don't trust you. You understand what I'm saying? Joseph, here's a good illustration. Joseph, God spoke to him. Well, Joseph wasn't mature enough to keep his mouth shut. He had to go run, tell his brother, which set the thing in purpose. We know in the long run it worked for right purposes. But how much better if Joseph would have just kept his dreams to himself? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but he didn't. He went and told it, and he made jealousy between his brothers, and it set the plan of God in purpose. So we know it worked in the long run. But sometimes God will speak to you, and he wants to know that he can trust you when he talks to you. He wants to know that he can put confidence in what he says sometimes. Because so many people, every time they speak, he just jumps. They just jump and just blah, blah, blah. They're like a machine gun. Bah, 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 bah. And God just wants to take you things. Sometimes he shares things with you that he only wants you to know. Especially when you get into prophecy sometimes in intercession. There's sometimes there's just a lot of times in churches that I've been to, and there's people who do hear from God. But sometimes God don't want you to go to the front and share everything he gives you. Sometimes you're waiting for something more. And we go up there and we share and then the enemy knows what's going on. Because I don't believe the enemy knows everything that's going on. I believe he goes by,
agree.
right. I believe, and if you go up and you spout something, you've tipped the devil's hand to something. And sometimes I just think God wants you to trust him and he wants that intimate relationship with you.
Right.
You know, if I went and told Mandy, things that hurt me during the day, long day at work, and I go home and tell her, that she gets on Facebook and says, Mike, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm not going to trust her, I'm saying, to speak to her and things of that name. God's the same way. He's ever forgiving and he's graceful. But he just like we learn each other, he wants you to trust him and to listen to him. He'll reaffirm things to you over and over again. So that's why he had to keep on reaffirming. So we got to the point about God promises Abraham's descendants would be as many as the stars. He says, basically you won't even be able to count them no more. That's in 15. And because he believed what God said, it was credited to him as righteous. In Genesis 15:6, that's where it talks about that. And then Paul develops the statement further in Romans 4:3. So here's what we said. If you accept the things that God tells you and you do what you're supposed to do, in God's eyes, you are righteous at that point because you're doing what he says do. And that's what credited to him. So, Ms. Pat, back on Genesis 15, if you're still there, read 7 and 8.
And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it?
God asked for evidence. So God asked for some animals, and Abram cut these animals in half. A goat, a ram, and he offered a dove and a pigeon. And he arranged the pieces, but he did not burn them. Exactly. God caused Abraham to fall asleep into a deep sleep. In a dream, God affirmed that Abraham himself would not possess the land, but his descendants would. A smoking fire pot and a blazing torch then passed between the pieces of the sacrificed animals. In ancient customs, people making a covenant walking between the halves of the sacrificed animals as part of their oath. Jeremiah 35:18 and 19 shows that the ancient customs, as does the Hebrews' idiom for making a covenant, literally cutting covenant. So basically, he cut the animals in half as a sacrifice. And of course, God fulfilled the covenant. In other words, Abraham needed that. He heard God speaking, but he needed a sign that what he was hearing, that God was going to actually do what he said he was going to do. So we see the covenant being made right here. He made the sacrifices, and then God came through and walked through them and fulfilled it.
That was an unconditional covenant.
Unconditional covenant.
Because
if it was conditional,
God made it. If it was conditional, it would be broken.
It'd be broken. Exactly. That's why the Abrahamic covenant will never be gone, and that because she said it's forever.
Yes.
God made the covenant. We didn't make the covenant.
Yeah.
Although he did ask for a sign, which was good. He made the sign. Okay. Many years later, God confirmed his covenant, changing Abram's name to Abraham, since he would be the father of not just one nation, but many nations. He promised to renew the covenant with Abraham's descendants, not only that they would be numerous, but he would be their God. This is more than the original covenant promise. God also required more from Abraham and his descendants. Circumcision was the sign of the covenant. That's Genesis 17:9-14. The covenant was both renewed and expanded. Circumcision, cutting the foreskin, was the continuing reminder that God has cut a covenant with Abraham and his descendants. The covenant is referred to in Acts 7 and 8 and Romans 4:11. So we see that's where circumcision comes into the covenant. The covenant is getting more and more and more. It starts out pretty simple. But as we start exchanging ideas and wanting different promises and stuff like that, there's more demands being put on this situation. Abraham's an old man now. He circumcised himself. I don't want to do that. You see what I'm saying? But he had to do this for this situation. And we knew this is why the Hebrews and the Jews now, same way. Circumcision, 8 days old, stuff like that. It's still a sign of the Abrahamic covenant. It's still, and we know now in the New Testament, we're circumcised and where? Right. Which is real, actually, the foreskin is one thing, but the heart is what God's always wanted. He's always wanted the circumcision of the heart. Always. Okay. So he promised to renew covenant for his descendants. Not only he would be numerous, but he would be their God. The sign of the covenant was circumcision. So that is the first covenant that we look at, was the Abrahamic covenant, and we see how important it is, because this covenant sets off a people, the people of Israel later on. It sets off the circumcision. It sets off that, more importantly, that God would be their God, which is, you got to realize, people don't realize this. People do not realize this. The Hebrew nation, from the time that Abraham was called out, continually battled with idols. We know that, when they came out, when they went into Egypt, stuff like that, even the Jewish writings tell you that they were plagued with idols. They take their father, they would marry the women from other nations, and they would bring their idols into their houses and stuff like that. And if you all know the story, after the walls of Jericho, the little bitty town that they could have taken with
AI.
Yeah. What happened? One family
Hid some idols and then caused the army.
to be killed, to destroy. Disobedience. God had a covenant. God's already told him he was going to win everything for him. But because of disobedience, it cost them a setback. Of course, they went back later on and annihilated them. But it took them time. And if they just would have been obedient, and when God makes a covenant, if we're obedient, he's obedient.
Well, if it hadn't been for the grumbling and complaining and the golden calf, they wouldn't have wandered for 40 years in the desert.
Exactly.
But we still have a lot of idols.
Oh, we do.
Yes, we do.
Mark, we do. This is a
We
continued.
got more idols.
We really do. I believe that also.
More idols.
I believe that too. I believe in our generation. Back then.
Because it was more simple.
Oh
back then,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be more. In one way, we probably would like. Me and you probably would have liked it better, because the fact that you were outside hunting, fishing, that was your job. It wasn't recreation. You did it all the time. But you worked in the land. You were outside, and you didn't have computer. You didn't have telephones. You didn't have television. You didn't have all this stuff to pull your time, to pull you away from God. But they found ways of doing it, though.
Yeah.
They found ways of doing it. So the second covenant we're fixing to cover is Mount Sinai. And we're going to start out saying, God remembered the covenant he made with Abraham, and he brought them out of Egypt. So they were following, we know from the time of Abraham, orally transmitted, they were following what God told them to follow. They followed Yahweh, the one true God. They were circumcised, and they chose to be his God. And somewhere in there, they had some form that they were worshiping God. Don't know what it is. Jews say they were following the Torah from the very beginning. I don't think so, because we know it didn't come here. But there was some form, because even when we read in Genesis, back from Abraham to Enoch to all these other ones, that they were all called out. Enoch, I'm trying to think of, what was his name? Seth. All these people of God were following God and preaching God. They were proclaiming righteousness. So there was some form that they had that they were worshiping God, So we know that Abraham started something there. In the land of Canaan, God made a covenant to them at Mount Sinai. So they're heading to Canaan. They're the people, the children of Israel, heading out there, and they get to Sinai, and God stops to make a covenant with them. And what is the feast this is? What feast is this? It's coming up.
It's gonna be Pentecost.
That's right.
Pentecost.
That's 50 days after Passover, and that is the day the Torah was giving. That is the day that the covenant was given to the children of Israel on the mountain. They had the Abrahamic covenant, but God's fixing to throw another one down on it. It don't change the first one, it adds to the first one. It doesn't do away with the Abrahamic covenant. It adds to, and the covenants just become more and more powerful as they grow on. As their ruler, he gave laws, and they agreed to keep them. If you obey me fully and keep my commandments, he told them through Moses, then out of the nations you shall be my treasured possession, and you will be for me a king and a priest and a holy nation. So why do you think God needed a holy nation at this time? Why did he need a people that were priests?
Well,
That's good.
As witnesses to the heathen nations around them.
That's exactly right. Today, the Jewish people would tell you they were never supposed to be the light to the nations. They'll tell you straight up that They have nothing to do with the non-Jews, that they were never supposed to be the light. But we just read here where God said, I'm going to make you a holy nation, and because of your obedience, you will be a light. We read later on in the Tanakh that God says, I will make you a holy nation, a light to the Gentiles to bring them in. So God was looking for a people that he could make holy in the way that he could, so that they would minister to him and he could minister to them. And because of this obedience, the nations around would see the obedience of Israel and the blessings of Israel, and they would want to come serve the one true God. That's the only, God's desire from the very beginning is to have fellowship with man, true fellowship with man. And he was going to use Israel to do this thing. So we see this is what happened. All right, the Abrahamic covenant, although it included obligations, stressed God's promises. The Mosaic covenant, although it included mercy and promise, stressed human responsibility. All right, for the first time, we're seeing that this covenant that God's fixing to give the nation of Israel is going to require something of the human side also. God's promises through Abraham was always, I'm going to do this, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless you, you just be set apart and just do what I tell you to do. Now we got a covenant that's going to come along with the 10 commandments, plus there's over 613 Torah commandments given that they have to do to be the holy nation, to be a priesthood. He had to separate them from the worldly thinking. So he had to develop ways to make them separate from the nations. And that's what they do still believe that they're supposed to be separate from the nations.
Yes.
But not in the sense of a light, but in the sense of being Jewish. Would you say that's right?
Yes, yes. And all 613 commandments can't be kept by everybody, because there are some that are just for women. There are some that are just for the priests. There are some that are just for men in general. There are some that can only be done in the land. There are some that only pertain to the temple. So even though it sounds like there's a lot, 613, not all of them apply to everybody.
Right.
And
There was laws for women after their cycle that they would have to do, or childbirth. Well, there's no way a man, that wouldn't involve us at all.
no.
Right.
And there's things that men would do that would not involve the women at all. Circumcision, of course, and things of this nature. So it does sound outrageous, 613. But there was some that only the priest would have to do.
Right.
The priestly laws and stuff like. Now, I'll tell you today, what the Jews do today would be the priestly stuff, because the whole they say, and the reason why they say this is you may be a Kohen, not know it, so it's better to fall on the safety and like for instance, Bella can't color on Saturdays in the house because that was one of the stipulations that you could not.
There's 39 categories of work that have to do with when they were building the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and there were things that anything they couldn't do on the tabernacle, they gave those categories to everybody in general. So you couldn't write, you can't cut, you can't count money, you can't create anything permanent. Like she can build with her Legos because that's not permanent. She can play with Play-Doh because that's not permanent. But and then you can't cook. And that was totally separate from the Mishkan. But then there's just a whole bunch of things that go along with the tabernacle.
Right.
So.
And that's why today they follow all of them. Where back in the day, all the people would not have followed all of those laws strictly because they were not priests. So we had a separation of the way of humanity.
They also say that the table has become the altar.
Yeah.
Because you can't sacrifice and that you can't do the service in the temple anymore. So the table, the home has become the temple, and the table, the Shabbos table especially, has become like the altar.
Right.
And the father's become the priest.
Right. Okay, the Ten Commandments.
Don't you think, excuse me,
Okay.
don't you think that in the beginning, Joel
Right.
was before
He's
Moses,
first one,
before
right.
Abraham.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so he was a priest to his family.
Sure he was.
Offered offerings for his
Sure
children.
he was.
Because they might have sinned inadvertently against God.
Right.
He was always so concerned for them.
Right.
So I think that God's original plan was for the head of the house to be the priest of the house.
Well, and that's true. And it's also true that the whole nation of Israel was supposed to be priests, not just the Levites.
Right,
It was supposed to be the whole nation. He wanted a nation full of priests. But when he came down from the mountain, only one tribe
right.
stood up for him and they became the priest. So the whole plan, but you're right on what you're saying, because a lot of Jewish study tells you the man is the priest of the home. And the Bible pretty much tells you that even in the New Testament, the New Covenant, the head of the household is the husband,
Right.
you know, and it's not that mean he's the domineering. He's not, you know, he works with his wife and quote, but he is the one that he's the final, he would face
Authority.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Basically, there was years ago, when I was just out of high school, first year in college, it was a study for how to build a Christian marriage. It's called Dad the Family Shepherd.
Right.
The man is the shepherd of the household.
Yeah.
Right? He protects and provides and
That's
But it
true.
doesn't mean
Exactly.
the wife can't help be the man.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I manage,
You work as a team.
No.
I manage the home,
Right.
but he is the authority of the
Right.
home.
Yeah, he
Now,
has the
And you-
final say.
if we have
He's-
something we're trying to do, and I think he's doing it wrong, I'll tell him I think he's doing
In
it
love.
wrong. But
Yeah.
I'll also say, you're the husband. It's up to you.
Yeah.
My
You can't
mom,
hold him accountable.
I love.
Yeah, she does.
I
Well, I mean, that's a good
I do.
thing. Yeah,
I
that's a
do.
good thing.
I do
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
him accountable.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Especially when it backfires.
Yeah. That's
Which-
what-
It
Especially
doesn't.
what?
He
when it
doesn't.
backfires. Thanks, Mark.
My mom and I had a conversation, and I don't agree with her. She comes from the perspective of he's the man, and whether he's doing it wrong or not, he has to be the man to do it wrong. I'm like, no. That is not why God gave you to him as a helpmate, because your job as a helpmate is to say, hey, let's look at this from my perspective for a second. I'm seeing it differently than you're seeing it. And I'll even come down to it, honey, will you do it this way for me? Even if you don't think it's the right way, please do it this way for me. And if I'm wrong, then I'm the first one to say, you know what, you were right, we should have done it the other way. But if I was right, then he says, oh, honey, you're right. This was a better way to do it. And that's the way a good husband-wife relationship should work.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the dominant type.
Well, you know, there can't be two heads. That's a monster.
That's
Right.
a monster. That's good.
Hydra, 7 heads.
That is a monster. That's not a good. Yeah. All right. The Ten Commandments form the core of the covenant. They were written on tablets of stone. And we know the first time God wrote them, and then the second time Moses had to write them.
Yeah.
So, and we know, so we know the Ten Commandments, and they will tell you also that when they break down the Ten Commandments, that's how they get different classifications, like the first commandment of love the Lord thy God. They break them down like that. And then they make categories underneath that, like the Shabbos, that's where all your violations on Shabbos come from. Loving your neighbor, they have whole, things about your neighbor.
The whole 613 can be categorized underneath the 10.
And actually, two,
The 2, love your neighbor and love God.
that's where they all come down to.
Mhm.
Okay, although the covenant was equated with the Ten Commandments, the covenant included all of Exodus 20 through 23. Now, it's interesting that in Judaism today, what they will tell you is that who was his name? The one that disobeyed? Korah. When he disobeyed God, when he complained, the Jewish people will tell you the whole battle of that came because he could not follow Moses's what he received from God. See, everybody heard the Ten Commandments. They know that God gave them the Ten Commandments. But Moses stayed up, remember, the cleft of the rock and got the rest of the story, shall we say. So when Moses came down from the mountain,
He didn't accept the
he didn't
authority.
accept the authority because he didn't hear it. He heard the Ten Commandments, but he didn't hear what Moses, so he didn't believe it. And that's why they say that's where the rebellion came in, and I can plainly see that.
Right.
Because when you don't want to follow authority, when authority's right, you fall in rebellion. Now, when authority's wrong, you got that waiver room right there. You don't want to get into rebellion, but you got ways out. But if authority's right and they're doing what God tells you to do, and then all of a sudden you go against that authority, you're in rebellion with God, and that's
Well,
what happened to him.
A perfect example of that, of this kind of a same thing, is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, coming to him and saying, "This is too much for one person to handle. You need to delegate it." And God said, "Yes, he's right." Basically, God agreed that was a good thing to do. But with Korach was basically saying, I'm good enough. We're good enough. Him and his crew. We're good enough to hear from God.
Right, we don't need you.
Why do we need Moses to intercede for us? That's basically what he said.
I think all that's true, but I think Korah was of the tribe of Levi. Moses and Aaron was of the tribe of Levi.
Right.
And I think Korah was saying, we're just, God speaks to us too because we're of the same tribe.
Right.
And Nathan and Abiram, who went along with them, were from Reuben.
Right.
And they were the firstborn tribe.
Right.
They were set aside because of Reuben's sin. And so you can see that the jealousy and the desire to be in authority rose up along with them.
Right. The need to be
And you see it through the family,
large
through
and
the
in
whole
charge.
generations. You saw it with the brothers in the beginning,
Yes.
and then you see the tribes throughout to the splitting of the tribes when David and Solomon. The jealousy never went away. It's ridiculous. Then you had the northern tribes and the southern tribes with different temples, different kings. The jealousy never stopped. And if you look at the church, not our church, I'm just saying, but if you look at a lot of churches, jealousy runs rampant in the church where people, I got a better word than they do. I don't know why I don't get to preach all the time. I don't know. I've heard it. I have been there, and it's disgusting. You know what I'm saying? But God, when it's time for you to speak, you'll speak. But jealousy is a very, very harsh thing. Okay, in this covenant, the people agreed to be servants of God, and he agreed to protect them. The covenant was not only with Israel as a nation, but also with Moses, as Ms. Pat just said, and its leaders. The law was given through Moses. God chose Moses and Aaron to be the authority. Yes, you had a tribe, but there's that like Jesus had an inner circle. You got that inner circle, and that's who God gave the authority to. That's why it's called the law of Moses. We know it's the law of God, but we call it the law of Moses because it was given through Moses, not the tribe. It was given through Moses, and Aaron performed it, which messed up the golden calf later on, lost the sons. Okay, so that's Exodus 34:10-7. Hebrews 9:1 says the original covenant also required regulations for worship in the sanctuary. The covenant has developed as time went on. So here again, we see God is fixing to give them instructions for a tabernacle that they don't even have yet. He's fixing to give them instructions to build furniture that they have no clue of what's going on here. So we see the covenant is growing. Now God's telling them about a place of worship that they don't even have. They're not even in the land yet. But God's already, that was supernatural instruction that he gave these craftsmen to work this.
It was in their head. It was like like in the Matrix when they stuck the thing up in the back of their skull and they downloaded the stuff. That's what he did to those artisans. He downloaded it into their head.
Because I have a good friend in Montgomery, Alabama. His name is Dewey Miller, and he's competition heads. He builds heads for race cars, and stuff like that. Well, he's been Christian probably since Jesus died when he was here, but he
he can hear that.
Yeah, I know. But he felt
Ron
the Lord
was watching.
He felt the Lord call him to say, I want you to build the tabernacle. I want you to build the furnishings of the tabernacle. So he's going to build the lamps. He built the lampstand. He built the menorah. He built the altar. He built the 7 candlesticks.
Oh yeah. When they go, I got you.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's a 7 one. But the thing is, he said this himself. He said that when you look at how they built it with no breaks in it and stuff like that, yeah, he said it was the hardest thing in the world.
It was all one piece of
it was all one piece.
But
so that's why we're saying it was a supernatural thing. That's why we're saying when God tells you to do something, he's going to equip you. He's going to reaffirm it first. And then he's going to equip you with the ability to do what you need to do. The candlesticks, not the ones in the inside the Mishnah, But when the temple was built, they had big candlesticks outside, that was the light. They said on Shavuot that they would light all these candles, and that's where we get Sidion
They
and
were
Yule, because they said
torches. They were
Yeah, they were
huge
torches.
torches.
and you could see them from miles off. But these things were humongous. And they would actually use the robes from Yom Kippur that the priest would wear. They would use those robes as the wick because it was so big.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how God gives us the ability to do the things that he tells us to do.
Mhm.
So it's like the only thing I can compare it to in my mind is like in the scene from, I think it's in Return of the King, where they go at the different mountaintops, like the big stacks of wood,
Yeah,
with the torches for people to see miles away.
well, that's what it was. Well, the nation of Israel at first, like when it came to Shabbos, they had to alert each other. They didn't have the internet and TV and stuff. So when, like for instance, the festival was going to start tomorrow, at first they would use fires. They would use fires to spread the word. In other words, we'd get a big smoky fire, and then you'd see mine a few miles down the road. Then you would start a fire, and we would spread the word that way. Well, the enemies of Israel saw this. So to confuse Israel, they would also light fires at different times, and they would mess everything up. So the sages say that they had to come to the conclusion that that God gave them the ram's horn and the silver trumpets, and that's how they started alerting the people. It's like an alarm that it's time. So they would sound the alarm. We got to get finished. Okay, we're almost done. We are done. So the main thing we need to learn from tonight is the covenant is it's in the process of growing. From a simple covenant he made with Abraham, it was a promises. I'm going to make you, I'm going to make you, I'm going to make you, I'm going to make you. And really not much requirement from Abraham except to leave. That's all he had to do. And then we get deeper into the covenant, and then Abraham goes, how can I trust you? How do I know this is going to happen? So God instituted a covenant with him with the cutting of the animals and walking through it. God made a covenant. So we're seeing that this covenant's getting larger and larger and now all of a sudden it's Sinai. When the Torah is giving, a bunch is being put upon the people of Israel's place now. It's not just a God-sided covenant now. God's requiring man to start doing their part also. And this is never going to change. Even in the New Testament, we're going to see there's a requirement by man also. Not for salvation. Forget salvation. We're saved by the grace of God and the blood of Jesus Christ. Once your salvation's bought, that's one thing. But once we're saved, there's obligations that the covenant's still going to be growing. Still going to be growing.
Well,
Father God, we just praise you and thank you tonight, and we love you. And Father, we just thank you for your word, God. And I just pray, God, that you would help us get a clear understanding, Father, of last week, what it is being a new man in you, a new creation. And even today, as we study what a covenant is and how we're getting into what a covenant is, what it's required to actually be a servant of God. Father, I can just imagine what it was on that mountain when you gave the Torah down to those people, Father. I just pray that when we get to the other side, that there's some way you'll show us what really happened, because I can just imagine the amazement of the people hearing your voice. And Father, I just pray that you would just help us understand that there is a great responsibility upon us. No, Lord, not for our salvation. You paid everything of that for us, and I thank you for our salvation. But Father, we are still priestly kings in the order of Melchizedek, Father. And there's requirements of things that you require from us also to walk in that peace and to walk in that blessing and that prosperity that you want for us. We just ask that you would be with us and touch us, and we just love you and thank you for everything. In Jesus' name we pray.
I was going to say before you started praying, it's like raising a child. You start out with small thing and you add and add, and you give them more responsibility as they grow.
Mhm.
And we as humanity, we're being given more and more responsibility as we grow.
Well, that's true, because
And as
when we get
believers.
into the Messianic kingdom, when whatever happens, we go to heaven.
Right?
We still have people think we're going to be sitting there on clouds playing harps and stuff like that.
No.
We have jobs to do.
Right.
We're going to be in the temple of
Serve
God.
the Lord day and
Serving the
night.
Lord
Exactly.
day and night.
But people think that we're going to be, playing harps and just sitting around. Ooh, it's not going to be that way. It's going to be continual growing. We're going to be continually growing, and that covenant's going to continue on.
Well, the goal is for us to return to the state we were in before the fall.
Exactly.
Amen.
You're gonna get
Exactly.
divorced too, right?
Huh?
We're gonna get rewards too, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
For what we do.
I don't know if we are or not, Mark.
I hope so.
Well, it's like I said 4 years ago when I was in college, is that when I get to heaven, I'll probably have the little street carved with the broom, going up and sweeping up the streets of gold, but hey, at least I'm there.
Exactly.
There you go.
I heard somebody else
I'd
say that
rather
one time.
sweep up the horse's poop on the streets of gold
Got
than,
that right, the burn.
than to be hanging out with the big boys
Yeah.
Down in the pit.
by the barbecue place down below.
Hubbard Sport.
Barbecue.
Yeah.
But,
All
I
the
never
GMs,
liked barbecue.
all the GMs and presidents.
but there's something I